This lesson is on graphing using intercepts. So we talked about this last lesson. How many points do we need to define a line? And that's just two. So I put a point here and I put a point here and I connect them with something resembling a straight line. That's all we really need. So where are two good places to find points on a graph? And this is not always the case, but for our purposes it'll have to do. On the x-axis and on the y-axis. So that's why we call it graphing using intercepts. Intercepts where a line hits the x or y axis. So here's how we do it. You put in x equals 0 and solve for y, then you put in y equals 0 and solve for x. So you have 2x minus 3y equals 6. Let's start with x. We get 2 times 0, and I'm not going to write that out every time because it's always going to cancel. So we solve, negative 3y equals 6, divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, y equals negative 2. Write out your point, 0 comma negative 2. Gets confusing otherwise. Other half of the equation, 2x minus 3y equals 6. And now we do y equals 0. Excuse me, should be equals. And we get 2 times x minus 3 times 0 equals 6. 2x equals 6. Divide by 2. X equals 3. Write the point out. Quick and dirty coordinate plane. And change our colors to see what we're doing. 0, negative 2. Remember, it always goes x, y, x, y. 1, 2, 3, 0. Connect the dots. We've made a graph. At this point, you might be saying, why are we making graphs? Well, it's a very good way to look at data. So we'll get into more detail with that, I believe, in Unit 5, but for the time being, let's just say we want to graph things. So try a couple more. And now I'm going to go much faster. X equals 0, we just say 6y equals 12. Y equals 2. Y equals 0. 4x equals 12. X equals 3. Quick graph. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Always got to put on your arrowheads. And down here it's 3, 0. And up here it's 0, 2. So 2 and 3. Connect the dots, which is always a lot trickier than it looks. We're done. So we'll graph pretty quickly. Let's try it again. X equals 0, we get negative 2y equals 8. Y equals negative 4. 0 comma negative 4. Y equals 0, we get 3x equals 8. X equals 8 over 3. 8 over 3, 0. Haven't left myself much room for my graph, so I'll have to sneak it in out here. Find our 2 points. In this case, we have 0, negative 4, about here. And 8/3 is 2 and 2/3, 1, 2, so about there, comma 0. Connect the dots. Nothing even remotely resembling a straight line came out of that one. And much better. And that is graphing by intercepts. Not the greatest way to do it, but sometimes finding an intercept's a pretty good idea, so for the time being, we'll see how it goes. Now we're going to get into graphing by what's called slope-intercept. The first thing we have to do is find slope. also known as a rate of change. So let's draw a line on the axis below. Let's draw one here. How would we describe the slope? And slope, you might have a lawn that slopes up to your house, or live on a hill that has a slope, or you've gone skiing on a slope. We would describe the slope as a uphill tendency. And it could be different. Here it could be like this. In this case, it could be downhill tendency. Slope might be flat, might be perfectly vertical. If you're a skier, different slopes mean very different things. Typically, when I get to this point, people say, oh, I know how to define slope. It's rise over run. How much does the slope rise? By how much does it go over before I hit it again? In this case, it's rise going backwards and run going backwards. So we'll talk about those slopes later. Another way to describe it is change in y over change in x. And those are little deltas. They mean change. Change in y over change in x. And the best way to do it is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And that's the way we're going to use. And it may basically all three of these things mean the exact same thing. But now we're going to get very specific. So let's find the slope between the points. x1, y1, x2, y2. Always label your points. Just going to leave yourself wrong. M stands for slope. Y, it's actually quite a mystery. There are a lot of theories about it. Some people believe it's the French word for hill, but it's not settled. But we're going to use it. M means slope. Get used to it. So now y2 minus y1, y2 minus y1, negative 1 minus 2, over x2 minus x1, 4 minus 5. Negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. 4 minus 5 is negative 1. Negative 3 over negative 1 is 3. So let's graph to see what we got for slope. And we're not graphing anything complicated. We're just connecting dots here. We got 5, 2, and 4, negative 1. So 5 over, 2 up, and 4 over, 1 down. Looks like my axis has gone a little fluey, so let me fix that. Good. And then we're just connecting dots. This is a slope of positive 3. Notice it goes up to the right. And we'll talk about how steep it is another time. So you're going to have to do this a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a real lot. How do we find slope? x2 minus x1 over y2 minus y1. So check it out. Now, what's the slope of a horizontal line? So we've got a coordinate system and another coordinate system. And we've got a horizontal line. Well, how much is it going up and down? And the answer is 0. How much is it going left and right? And the answer is a lot. We'd actually like to write infinity, but we're not allowed to. It's an illegal thing. So slope of a horizontal line is 0. You remember this because it's kind of like writing a Z, which stands for 0. How about a vertical line? Well, the vertical change is a lot, and the horizontal change is 0. Well, you're not allowed to divide by 0. Try it in your calculator, see what happens. So we call that undefined. And again, if you drew a U, that's how I remember it. Kind of like drawing a U. So M equals UND, undefined. Don't get this confused with the equation. The equation of this line is, I hope you remember, y equals 3 or something like that. And the equation of this line is x equals 2, or something like that. So those are two different things. The equation of the line and the slope of the line are two different things. So, told you I'd talk about this briefly. How do we label slope? Well, we use the m. And what do we know about slopes that are positive? Positive slopes are always up to the right. Up to the right. Negative slopes are down to the right. And some people want to say up to the left, just keep it all to the right so you can keep it straight. And I always go through this because if you do a problem and you find out you have a positive slope, but your line is going down to the right, please fix it. Greater than 1, we'll get into more of this later. Steep. Between 0 and 1, flatter. So like 1/2, 1/3, 1/5. You're getting closer and closer to a horizontal line. Lots of information here. Practice, 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 and come back to these concepts. Do not be afraid to go over your notes to make sure you remember that a zero slope is horizontal, a vertical slope is undefined, a steep slope is a number like 9, 10, or 11, a positive slope goes up to the right, a negative slope goes down to the right. Good luck.